I'm Adam. I'm here with JC, who's the VP of Publishing for Gemstone Publishing. So I'm going to ask him a few questions about the new OverStreet price guide for 2015. How's it going?
Well, it's going great so far. We are deep into the production of the book. This is the 45th anniversary edition of the book, and it's going to be one of the best ones yet, I think.
Awesome. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your job? What does being the vice president entail?
Well, one of the things, the bread and butter, the main thing of my job is, of course, the OverStreet comic book price guide. Mm-hmm. And that takes up, we always say it's an annual book with an 18-month production cycle. So we're always working on one, selling the previous one, and thinking about the next one. In addition to that, we work on our line of how-to books and anything else that Gemstone has coming up. So I'm involved in the planning of that.
Sounds like you're a busy man.
It keeps me off the streets.
All right. Well, we've seen online that you're very involved in the convention world. You do a lot of appearances there, promoting the price guide and everything. So can you talk a little bit about what the book coming out in the conventions as well as online and in stores does?
Sure. One of the things when we made the move with price guide number 40 to come out at preview night at San Diego, we're in comic shops the same day and available from online retailers the same day. It was a big thing for us to be able to get. It's a fun thing where you work all year on this book, and then you put it out there, and you don't really get any immediate reaction.
Okay.
In terms of like the vanity or self-gratification stuff that this gives us, is we get to actually hand it to some of the key advisors and advertisers in the book. And they get it like right before the show opens at San Diego, and we get to give it to them. And sometimes they want to get a photo, with us handing it to them, and that's really fun. And you also get to see their reaction to the covers.
Okay.
And that's always been a big thing.
Yeah, I can always see that getting to see people's smiling faces when you hand them something that you worked really hard for is always great.
Yeah, and it's really fantastic, and it's also gone a long way to recruiting new advisors for us, people who want to participate because they see us out there and involved in this, particularly at Comic-Con in San Diego. We also have had a few other books, not the price guide, because that has to come out the same time everywhere. Mm-hmm. But we've had a few other books that we've been able to do show debuts for. Like recently, the OverStreet Guide to Grading Comics came out at the Virginia Comic Con.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing like that.
All right. Well, speaking of the OverStreet Price Guide, what's going to be special about this new 45th edition?
Well, one of the things is we normally do 2 covers this year, and I promise it's a one-time only deal, but we're going to do 4 covers this year.
Oh, okay.
We're only announcing one so far, and that's the one we announced previously, which is Paul Gomolisky doing Captain Action. Okay. But it will be very soon that we'll announce the others.
Oh, awesome. Well, speaking of the covers then, how did you go by choosing the cover?
One of the things that we always try and do is we try and equal what Bob Overstreet started. The first professional cover that was on the price guide was number 5, and it was Joe Kubert.
Okay.
And that was followed by number 6, Will Eisner. And that was followed by number 7, Carl Barks. So if you get the idea that Bob set the standard for us here,
pretty high.
That's what we try and live up to each year. And many artists, if you'll go around and talk to them at conventions or privately, you'll find out that doing an OverStreet cover is a bucket list kind of item. And that's how we get such astonishing work from people like Mark Chiarello or Walter Simonson or Amanda Connor or Matt Wagner, and from a big variety of people and talents that are really diverse, I think, and yet they all sort of see this as like a real career mark that they want to be part of it. Our job is to keep raising that standard and keep doing that. And I think this year, when people see what we're doing, they're gonna think we did it again.
This sounds really cryptic, and I'm really excited. Is Bob Overstreet involved in this new edition much?
Oh, absolutely. This is one of my favorite questions. Oh, is Bob still involved in the price guide? Yeah, right now I will tell you, there's no price guide without Bob. We'd have some really nice articles and some really nice ads, and no pricing if not for Bob.
Oh God.
He is continually hip deep in that. My favorite thing is that just about 20 years ago, when I started at Gemstone, one of the first conversations I had in person with Bob was, Bob told me he didn't know how much longer he was going to be doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's 20 years later. And I'm sending him all sorts of data, and he's writing back like, oh, what do you think we should do here? And I give him my 2 cents, and then he comes back with what he thinks we ought to do. And it's a delight to, first off, most people don't get to do what I do, which is I run a book that I grew up reading.
That's awesome.
You know, that as a comic collector, on my worst day, I'm running a book that I grew up reading. That's pretty awesome. I mean, and that's all because we're in a great position because Steve Geppi not only believed in this book, but really believed in it and kept it going, and has now really elevated the game of it. And I think that when you see everything that's in this book, it's a reflection of what Bob did and what Steve not only kept alive but nourished.
Okay. Sounds like he's still a really big part of the machine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
He's it.
Huge cog. So just a little segue here. Indie comics are a growing fad
Sure.
among popularity and all that. So is there going to be any increase for indie comics in the new price guide?
One of the things we'll never do is we'll never tell you what's coming up price-wise in the guide.
Okay, all right.
You cannot imagine the number of ways that people ask me, and I tell them no, and then they come back and try and ask me a different way. And I have been known to call a few people and ask them what kind of comics they have, and then tell them they're all going down.
All right.
But no, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of indie comics, I can tell you, particularly if you want to talk about Image, which we've seen such a fundamental shift in the last few years of that becoming a writer-centric thing, where you either have writers and artists in partnership, or things that are really driven by the writer take front stage there. If we have Walking Dead is obviously the big example, that's
huge.
always, the collected editions of that are always in the top 20, and sometimes dominating the top 20 graphic novels. But beyond that, you also have dozens of very creative titles that aren't going to find a place in a superhero-centric publisher. And I think they're developing their own style in terms of what, or let's say redeveloping a style of what constitutes an Image comic. It's really been a phenomenal thing to witness.
Awesome. So just moving right along to the publication of the Guide to Grading Comics.
Sure.
So I understand there's a 0 to 10 scale. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between maybe 1 to 2 or 8 to 9?
Sure. I think one of the things you want to look at is that the more valuable the comic is, the more sensitive, and in some cases hypersensitive, we become to the grade of the comic. If you are looking at a copy that you just want to read, it doesn't really matter what grade it is. If you just want to read it for the reading enjoyment, you could afford almost any comic is in the affordable price range if you're willing to take a poorer copy of it.
Of course.
But at the other end of the spectrum, like for instance, a lot of attention has been paid to Action Comics #1 for very good reason. There are maybe 100 copies of it. That's sort of the commonly accepted number. And so now we're to the point where even restored copies are selling for high figures. But to really narrow it down even further, if you look at an 8.0 copy was the first comic to sell for $1 million.
Whoa.
8.5 hit $1.5 million. The first 9.0 hit $2.1 million. And then finally a 9.0 with white pages hit $3.2 million.
It's a lot of money.
and you can see that's only from 8 to 9. And then a little finesse in the 9 for whether you had, white pages or not. So the grades can be critically important. Or on the other end of the spectrum, if you're just looking to read it and you're not worried about the dollar value, then it's not so important. So it all depends on what your agenda is going in to get it.
Okay. That sounds great. Just to satisfy my own curiosity, what about signed copies?
Signed copies, there's different schools of thought on this. One thing is that, like, if you go to CGC, they will be happy to witness you getting a signature. Then the signature will be counted as an authentic signature. If it isn't witnessed, then they will note that it has writing on it that says Stan Lee. They won't officially say, however, that's Stan's signature. CBCS, the new company, has a relationship with an autograph authentication company. They will authenticate previous autographs if they are able to do so, and that will count as certified with that. They will also do the thing witnessing
Okay.
Your signature added. So that's a big part of it. If you go to old-time collectors, many of them don't like signatures at all, even if they're witnessed. I think that if that's what you're into, it's cool.
Awesome. Well, do you guys have anything special in store for Free Comic Book Day coming up?
Oh yeah, we sure do. Every year we do an issue of Free Comic Book Day issue of Comic Book Marketplace. And this year it will have a little bit about that Action 1. It will have some record-breaking movie poster in it, the big sale. And then we'll look at different areas of collecting. We'll have some on comic art. We'll have some on comics themselves. We'll have a little comparison of prices between 1970 and now on some very key issues, and a bit more of that. We'll also have several of our people from our staff out at different locations around the country doing signings that day.
Awesome. Looking forward to May then.
Absolutely. Free Comic Book Day is always cool, and we're always glad to be part of it.
Yeah. Personal question again. Are you reading anything right now? What are you excited for?
Yeah, the thing that I'm most excited about right now is Hugo Pratt's Corto Maltese, the graphic novel that just came out from the Eurocomics imprint at IDW. I had read the advanced copy PDF of it from this translation and thought it was really cool, but I had no idea what cool was till I actually got the printed copy. It is just, it's so outstanding, and I'm deliberately taking my time with it because it is such a joy.
Yeah, I read it too, and I really enjoyed it. It's literature, like it's a necessary thing to have.
It is, and I think there's a great quote from, I'm going to paraphrase it, but from Brian Michael Bendis on the back cover, and it talks about if you think you've got a kick-ass collection of graphic novels and you don't have this, you don't.
You're wrong.
Yeah.
So when can we look to get the price guide?
Price guide will be out Wednesday, July 8th. 2015, same day as the preview night at San Diego. It'll be in comic shops that day and available from the online retailers as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. You've been a pleasure. Thank you for speaking with me.
Glad to.